Hi, my name is Sermons Gillis, and I have a couple of mottos that I go by. One is silliness is sacred. So if you think this is going to be a serious thing, don't worry, it's not going to be. Sometimes we take our spirituality a little bit too seriously, and it's like, okay, I'm going to learn something about relationships. And it's like, this is about an energetic sharing. We're all here together in satsang, in community, in communion, and we're going to throw around some ideas. And I have some of my favorite people here with me on the panel. And also I can see that there's some wonderful people joining us as well. And I just can't wait to get started as we talk about spirituality as a training ground for relationships. I will tell you that I'm married, and that is one kind of relationship, and that is a human relationship. But we should never forget that we are in relationship with the planet. We're in relationship with the plants. We're in relationship with the animals. We're in relationship with water. We're in relationship with money. Now, what I'm basically going to focus on today is our relationships with each other, with people, with humanity, and our relationship that we have together. And that's the one that we often focus on because it's where we stumble so much. Relationships are where we get to know who we are, because if I'm in solitude and I'm just by myself, I can't see all the things about me that show up when I'm in relationship. And as we train ourselves spiritually to become who we truly are, relationships are one of our greatest training grounds. We don't have to go to India to get a guru. We don't have to go to the Himalayas and meditate in a cave, even though I've done both of those things, as wild and crazy as I am with my spirituality. But what we do is that we can just be right with our friends and families and even the people that we meet on the street, and we can grow ourselves spiritually. I've got a wonderful group of people that I want to introduce to you that we're going to be throwing these ideas about. And one of these women, and this will be the person that I've known really the longest, because I met her back, it would have been in the 80s, when I had a spiritual center connection in Memphis, Tennessee, and she came as one of the guest speakers, and we have been in touch on and off through the years. She came with a friend, and they had just published a wonderful book, and she's getting ready to publish another book on the empowerment of women, and that is her passion, empowering women. And when I introduce you, just wave. I'd like you to meet Leslie Michaels. Leslie, as you'll just wave. Another wonderful friend of mine that I met at Potlucks for Peace, and that's a group that actually Bob and Noel, our friends from Co-Creators Convergence, they have spoken there. But my friend is just one of the most outstanding, interesting, novel kind of people that I know. And she has an amazing relationship with her husband that I knew even before I knew her. She is the author of a book on boundaries. She's also a coach and speaker, as Leslie is as well, which I left out. But I'd like you to meet Don Koufakis Basil. And also, we have a man on the panel. I think that's a great thing. And he is someone that I met through the Centers of Spiritual Living. And the moment I met him and his wife, I knew that I had met friends for life, because they were the same vibration. These people are wild and crazy. They follow every inkling they have without reservations. They don't say, why I can't really do this. They say, how can we make this happen? And they make it happen in so many arenas. They found Co-Creators Convergence. They sponsor a wonderful retreat every year. It's been in Colorado, but the Emissaries of Divine Light house, I think it's going to be in Texas this year. Just a wonderful man, a spiritual giant. This is Bob Warner. Of course, you can wave your hand because you're the only guy that it's there. Well, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, and I quote this a lot, said that we can get along with humans, we can get along with people we don't know, we can love animals, we can grow plants, but let somebody step on our corns and watch out. And what did she mean? And that is that when people get up and when they get close and personal in our lives, and we have these intimate relationships, that everybody's corns get stepped on and we get reactive and we're triggered. And so these relationships and the way that we handle these triggers are the things that really grow us spiritually. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about the black and blue teachings, and these are the ones where there's a lot of austerity and maybe there's some suffering and pain, because and I don't know that that's the whole training, but what we're talking about here is just, oops, I've got my flashing thing going on here. Let me get my mind straight on that. But what we need spiritually is a new way to go. And so let's hear from some of our panelists. I'm going to call on you to perhaps give us some ideas in your life. I'm going to start with you, Leslie, and that is that let me turn off my emails because they're making noises here. The whole thing, excuse me. There we go. Leslie, you have your passion is really empowering women. And one of the things that I've noted with a lot of women is they get in relationships, especially relationships with a partner, special love relationships, and they lose their power. And I just wonder if you could speak to that and what you see as somewhat maybe a cure for that. And if any of the other panelists want to move into that, then let me know. And also for the other panelists, if I say something and that's not what you want to talk about in that moment, just jump in with your heart and what's up for you in that moment. I'm just a guide here. I don't have to be in control. So Leslie, if you'll just speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you for having me here today. I would love to speak to that. I have been working with women for, well, let's just say a number of decades. And so an undefined number of decades. And the thing that I end up speaking with the majority of them about is women's taught inherent inability to say yes to themselves. We can say yes to our kids and yes to our partners and yes to the soccer team and yes to the spiritual group, but to not say yes to ourselves. And so what happens is I see women going around feeling bruised, feeling a little black and blue. And as we converse and as I invite them to consider that, the thing that I like to remind women is that our relationship with ourselves is two things. It's equal to the amount of love we are willing to express to ourselves. And it determines how much love we can receive from outside of ourselves. So I like to invite women to play the yes game. Just start saying yes to everything, absolutely everything that lights you up. And they'll say, oh, Leslie, you must be out of your mind. Well, sometimes yes, but not on this. And I just don't have time. We all have the same number of hours in a day. It's just, where do we place ourselves on the priority list? All I'm inviting them, anyone, to do is to give yourself a promotion. Just like you have a job, you get a promotion. Give yourself a promotion where you matter a little bit more to you. The time you give to yourself is a little bit more important than what it has been before. You'll still have time to do all those other things. And if you miss a dinner with friends, if you don't pick up the dry cleaning, the thing about it is that you're going to discover is that you're happier. So it doesn't matter as much that you miss that dry cleaning. You're more ready to laugh. And if you're more ready to laugh, you're more ready to be available to life. You're more ready to be available in life. And I promise you, your kids, your partner, whether it be a man or a woman, whoever it is that you didn't quite fulfill your expectations that you had placed on yourself and told them you would fulfill for them, they're going to be fine with it because they're going to enjoy being with you so much more because you are enjoying being with you so much more. So play the game of yes. How many times today, tomorrow, this week, can you say yes to you? And a fun little trick to kind of use as a barometer. Get yourself a little book. At the end of each day, write down all the yeses that you said. What you will find from today to a month from now is you are saying yes to yourself much more a month from now. And as you reflect on how all of the other areas of your life have evolved, you're going to notice that there's more love. There's more love, there's more joy, there's more playfulness in your life. Life has become more of what we came here for it to be. So I hope that serves you. Thank you for letting me share that, Anne.
Oh, that is wonderful. I'm going to give myself a promotion.
Give yourself a promotion.
Oh, I like that. And on that same topic, I'm going to see if the other panel members want to weigh in on any of that. And of course, Bob, you might weigh in on the idea that, I don't know if you've seen it, that men might give their power away in relationships where there's duty, responsibility, whatever it is that you might weigh in on that. So whoever wants to go first, if you have anything to say, Dawn, just unmute yourself.
Okay, I love that conversation because it's at the heart of what I do. When it comes to setting boundaries, because I've worked with women a long time too. And the major thing that I've noticed is that women have to learn to give themselves permission. They have to give themselves permission to understand that it's okay to take time for themselves, to express themselves, to enjoy themselves, to nurture themselves. And it's not a selfish thing. We're wired and we're taught in so many ways by society, by our families, by our faith backgrounds, and on and on and on, that we are the people who nurture others. We're the people who, keep the world going. We feed, we cook, we clean, we speak to and hold and shoulder all these things. And at some point you just burn out. And the issue of taking time to learn how to love yourself is seen as something negative, is seen as something selfish and really rooted in conceit, being conceited, when it's the furthest thing from that. So this idea that we have to give ourselves permission, first and foremost, to enter the realm of self-love, not just for the purpose of us loving ourselves, but for the purpose of us being people who are capable of loving others better. So that is a meaty area to get into and to unlock so that, women feel empowered to do the work to learn how to love themselves.
Thank you. Yes. And, it's wonderful because what both of you are doing right now is, as we stand in community, is like we all have to keep giving ourselves and others permission to do that. We have to say, look, you need to take time off. Look, you need to take care of yourself. Look, nobody's going to care if X doesn't get done. So, Bob, do you have anything that you want to add to that conversation,
Sure.
and maybe from the male perspective?
Sure. Well, is it male or is just this is the roles that each of us, Noel and I, have in our relationship? Clearly, Leslie and my wife Noel spoke sometime or a few days ago, which I didn't know about, because I appreciate, Anne, your introduction about how we say yes to everything. Sometimes one of us says yes and one of us doesn't say yes. And so I will explain that for a moment about how's that a spiritual tool for me? So Leslie obviously told my wife to say yes to what would make her happy. And so the day before, we are room stewarding and Zoom hosting 35 sessions as a part of World Unity Week from 9 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. Noelle decided it would make her happy if she got a 6-week-old puppy. And so she's very happy. One of us didn't say yes to that. In fact, when the adoption agency brought the puppy the morning before yesterday, they said, oh, well, Noelle said it's okay that you're going to build a set of steps up to the bed for the dog to get in. I said, that's what I have planned for the next 4 days during World Unity Week. So example that's very contemporary and now nipping at my feet right here as I sit here is how do I find as a man who has long ago given up the idea of the patriarch running this household, deal with this as a spiritual lesson, an opportunity of our spiritual relationship and journey together. And I'm 48 hours into it now, so I'm continuing to work on that. And hello, Magi. We've named the puppy after our co-creators Convergence Gifts of the Magi room. And so the wise dog will be teaching me lessons. So I really appreciate, Dawn, you and Leslie's comments about how important it is for the woman, in the case that you were discussing, to declare what's happy for them and what is important for them, and for them to take care of themselves. And I would offer that I believe that is the case for both partners in a relationship, to be able to do that. And one of the keys to the success that we have found in the ways that we have found it is a recognition of that for the other, a recognition for me to appreciate the importance of Noelle saying yes to those things, which I may agree with or may not agree with. And most of the cases it is, and vice versa. And that is a foundation upon which this relationship can stand that makes it so much stronger. And we'll talk about some other things later. So thanks for including me.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you. I think you addressed that so well. In India, they have a tradition, and that is that probably most of you do know this, but during their productive years, they're called householders. And then after householders, then it's usually the man that goes off and leaves the family, and he goes on his spiritual journey, because it's said that when he's got his family duties and he has his family, that he can't pay attention to his spiritual growth. So he goes off. Well, that's an interesting model, but we don't have that kind of model in this country, because pretty much we're going to stay together as relationships, whether it's best friends, whether it's colleagues at work, whomever it is, we're going to be in these relationships, and we're going to have to continue to grow spiritually. And my definition of growing spiritually is really growing into the knowledge of who we are. Because who I am as a spirit, if I don't know myself as that, if I don't know the core of who I am, then I'm missing out, not only on the spiritual journey, but I'm missing out on my power. I'm missing out on who I truly am. I will never feel at home in my skin unless I know who I am. And a lot of people say, well, relationships they really get in the way of that. And I love that Gongji says, the thing that we think gets in the way is the way. And so in this country, maybe relationships are the way. The Course in Miracles say that special relationships are not necessary, but I will use them as stepping stones into wholeness. And so that's how we can use these relationships. So when we talk about loving ourselves as a spiritual training, then I will say that there are stages, and that is that we love who we think we are. until we discover who we are. And a lot of it is that we have to love our stumbling blocks, have compassion toward our mistakes. We have to love our mistaken beliefs that we're not okay. I mean, we have to just send love unconditionally to every aspect of ourselves so that we don't demand perfectionism in our lives, because that becomes another stumbling block. And spiritual people often have demands that normal people just wouldn't have. It's like we hold ourselves to a higher standard, but it's a standard that's not healthy. And so I want to move on after we've gone to that. And I'd like to ask Dawn, I know you've had the experience of meeting some very powerful and intelligent women who really don't know how to set boundaries. I'm guessing that is true. You've had, people that, you would just wonder. I mean, I've heard about therapists that are just brilliant, world-renowned therapists who in their home, they fight like cats and dogs. They can't get along together. They're miserable. The police get called in. I mean, all that stuff. So,
Let's hope the police stay out of it.
Yeah, really. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to this and just say about boundaries. What kind of boundaries do you think we should have in place in good spiritually grounded relationships? And I'm not talking religion here. I'm talking about the spirituality of love and peace and joy and compassion. That is the spiritual home of who we are. So Dawn, can you give us some on this?
Sure. First and foremost, boundaries I define as the rules and tools we employ to govern our lives so that we can live life by our own design. Okay, because a lot of times people have this misconception about what boundaries are. It never fails when I go into a group to do a workshop or do a presentation and I ask for a definition of boundaries. It's some kind of thing a wall we put up or a way of learning how to talk to somebody to tell them how to back up, or get off or whatever. And that's not what boundaries are at all. Boundaries are the things that quantify that you are a person who embodies self-respect and self-honor, right? And self-protection. You look out for yourself. You take care of yourself. You're a person who's on guard against the things in the world, the people in the world, the opportunities in the world that would encroach upon your peace. So that's what boundaries are. And for me in relationships, the necessary boundary, the number one thing that I feel is necessary is honor, internally and externally. You have to honor yourself. You have to understand, first and foremost, that you have a right to be in this world. You have a purpose to fulfill that nobody else can. You are a unique creation. There's no one else like you. There will be no one else like you. And for that purpose alone, you have something to contribute. And you were born into this world for that purpose. When you come to the place where you understand that, and you may not even know what the purpose is, but just understanding that you were created for a purpose, that you are on a journey to discover, that alone should give you enough understanding that you are to be honored. And you are first and foremost to honor yourself. When it comes to relationships, nothing lasting and nothing worthwhile is going to stick around without honor. And that means integrity, that means trust, it means honesty, it means treating people with honor, treating them like people that you see, you hear, you feel, they matter, and that you are there to help them grow. And even if you can't help them grow, you are there to help them to sit and listen, to be someone who can be with them in their struggle. So I have learned that there's two ways to be in relationship. Some relationships are mirrors. They're held up to you for you to see yourself. My husband, I feel like, is a mirror in my life because he is such a balanced human being. And when I look at the rung of spirituality, he's far ahead of me. He's just a person who knows how to meet life with a peace that's already built in. I have a tendency to be a little bit high strung. Sometimes I can be a little bit anxious, but he brings me to a place of peace just being with him. And so for me, he is a person that when I am out of sorts or when I feel myself getting out of balance, being with him and talking to him and expressing all those things brings me to a place of balance. So he is my mirror because he helps me to see myself. And then there are people who are sandpaper people. Those people are in your life to help you shape, right? They're going to rub up against you. They're going to rub up against you sometimes in ways that make you feel diminished beyond your capacity. But in those moments, we feel so compelled to fight back, and we feel so compelled to dishonor people and to mistreat them and to push them away. But the question should always be, why are these people in my path? And what purpose are they here to serve? And what am I supposed to learn? Most importantly, what am I learning in my experience in this relationship? Now, if you're with somebody who's dangerous, if you're with somebody who is a threat to your well-being, mentally, physically, spiritually, that is not a learning ground. That is a ground you must exit. But if it is a boss, which I've had a boss who was he was a narcissist, and he really enjoyed making people uncomfortable. He loved the control. He loved exerting fear over people. But when I came to the place of understanding that it was built on a foundation of insecurity, that it wasn't really about me or anybody else, that I watched him brutalize or mistreat, I developed a certain empathy toward him. Now, I did get out of that job, but in the time that I had left to work with him, my stance with him changed, because I had a conversation with him and I said, you know, you remind me of my dad. My dad was a guy who was really driven in life, and he was really successful, but he grew up very poor, and he grew up very unsteady because he didn't have a dad around. And he often felt like the only man in the house with a mom and 2 aunts. And he started working at 6 years old. And I think inside of him, there was built up this feeling of always having to maintain control, to not slip back into that time of life where he had no control and he didn't know which direction life would take him. And I think sometimes it gave him rough edges. And I said, I see that in you sometimes, but I also see the brilliance, the same brilliance that was in my dad. And so I get it, you know, sometimes when you get upset and you kind of become bristly, and he laughed, you know, and I thought to myself, you have to kind of make a little hole and get in there and let them know you see them, but you also honor them and you appreciate them. And it did change things for me. It changed things for me. So it taught me that power that you do have, however small, to change those circumstances. But power and success, money, all of those things play no part when it comes to spiritual healthiness, peace within, loving yourself, and finding success by your own definition is the goal in life, not chasing after that definition that other people have set. And learning to have boundaries internally and externally to control the expectations that the world sets for you and the unrealistic expectations you set for yourself. So honor would be my first and biggest boundary that I would set in relationships.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
That's great. I appreciate it. So yeah, boundary is a tool, and I love it. We often think about boundary as something that shuts people down, but maybe that's not what you're saying at all. And I appreciate that. Do either one of you, Bob or Leslie, have anything that piqued in you that you want to weigh in on, that reminded you of, or anything on that topic, or something that sparked your interest? Just give me a little wave, Leslie. Yeah.
I really appreciate the way you started out, Dawn, about talking about the fact that it's not a wall, which was reiterated by Anne, because what I always tell the women with who I work with is that a boundary, a true boundary, is a respectful agreement. It's not about shutting anyone out. It's not about shutting anyone in, because there are boundaries. I've seen people, I'm sure you have as well, that they have boundaries that, oh, you can't come close to my partner, or you can't do this in my house there. That is not my understanding of boundaries. It's respectful agreements. And again, the first respectful agreement, the most important respectful agreement, is with ourselves. The agreement to act in the most self-respectful way possible. Because as we learn to be self-respectful, we learn respect in a different way than what our culture and what our society have taught us. And then we can extend it to everyone else around us. That's all I had to add, because Dawn's explanation on boundaries was so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if you had anything, Bob, on that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Dawn, because this self-honoring is so significant. My bio reads that when I started my spiritual journey, looking back on it when I would declare that I had started it, although it was so subtle, probably 13, 14 years ago, when I declared at my retirement dinner 13 years ago, when they asked, what are you going to do now? I said, whatever she says. And what little did I know at that time that really meant not just my beloved she, but the feminine, the rise of the feminine, the significance of that, because those were still years in the future for me to discover on my spiritual journey of the significance of that for all relationships across humanity. And back at home there also. And so I really, my epitaph at that time I would have written as put on my tombstone, I was a pilot since I was in high school, and I served aviation organizations as an executive. And that's pretty limited self-honoring. And so through the years since, I have been blessed, because we have been blessed, because both of us have been on a journey of this respectful agreement. Thank you for that, Leslie. A respectful agreement as each of us have progressed in self-honoring, in the growth of that, and being able to support one another in that, so that we can better support others beyond our primary relationship here. And so that understanding of our journey to love, serve, and remember who we are, and to love and to serve has had a whole different meaning to that tune. And the blessed opportunity that we've had for our spiritual growth, because we certainly have witnessed where couples, married or unmarried, but couples who one has been on a spiritual path of this self-discovery, of this self-honoring, of this finding their authentic self, and the other one has not been. And frankly, in the beginning of that journey for us in our relationship, when we went to the seminar of the century with Harv Eker about being a millionaire, and Barbara DeAngelis was up on the stage, the only woman in 4 days worth of speeches, and Noelle says, I'm going with her. There was a level of fear on my part that I would be left behind, that she was going to discover more about herself and who she was in the world. I mean, here's someone who's a PhD and has, drifted around, not drifted, but gone through all kinds of different career paths. But still, when I stayed late one night, too late at a business dinner, I came home and found out there were 3 miniature horses in the yard, because I wasn't paying enough. She wasn't happy. And so, although I thought I was happy writing that epitaph for my tombstone, I thought I was happy. I thought she was happy because I brought her along on international trips and travel all over the country and flying her own airplane. But she declared with 3 miniature horses in the yard that she was not happy. And so those were some moments on the journey that provided an opportunity to say, I need to support her so that she can better support me in what matters, not in net worth or size of house or number of cars or airplane or whatever else. And so it brings me to a final thought about the significance of support systems, because through the course of the last 13 to 14 years, how significant it has been for us. We've found our way into various support systems that have just materialized for us and along our consciously evolving road. And they've been so significant, and it's one thing that has helped us as a couple, we see have helped others in their own personal and spiritual growth. And we lament when we see relationships and others who we believe really need the support of a support system, but are deciding to do things on their own. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to say that I was raised, thank you so much. And I'm going to ask you something else too, Bob. But I was going to say, my parents were divorced when I was 2. I did not have any good role models for good relationships. And I have taken it upon myself to study afar other relationships. John and Dawn, for instance, have a wonderful relationship. And Bob and Noel, you have such a wonderful relationship. Y'all's relationships are very different. It's not like there's a cookie cutter thing that do this and everything's gonna be great. You both couples, you have individual ways that you deal with your spouses, you live your lives, very unique. And I'm wondering, one of the things, now you've made a lot of transition in your relationship, Bob, since you started, because, you know, you were the corporate person. And I think that both Leslie and Dawn know that story as well. And you were the corporate person, you transformed, I guess is the word, into someone who was willing to listen to their heart's call. You might not have known exactly what it was, but you were willing to do that. And both you and Noel were doing that simultaneously, or maybe a little bit this, that, and the other, but I think you've finally gotten together. And one of the things that you do, and I've noticed that you both do, is that you serve humanity, that you went off on a bus trip around the country to present Barbara Marx Hubbard's movie. I'm not sure which one it was, but one on, maybe it was on Humanity
Rising, yes.
Humanity Rising. And you have been taking a group to Dom and Her in Italy. Is that where it is? The spiritual community in Italy. And you've got Co-Creators Convergence, you have retreats, you do a lot of different things. And I'm wondering how doing these things has served your relationship. In other words, the focus is different. So how has that changed your relationship? Do you think that that has enhanced your spirituality? You know, just speak some to that.
It absolutely has. Thank you. Because at the core of it all is love and justice and respect for others. And so sort of underlying both of us as individuals, that has existed all along. I don't think we've had the language 10 years ago for it. And frankly, we were so busy doing our own thing. I like to say, I worked 38 years in service organizations, aviation service organizations. And Noelle was in universities as a professor, and she was in clinical work and that sort of thing. So she was in service to others. And we recognized through this last 10 years that that's important, but if not growing spiritually, and therefore bringing ourselves as a spiritual person to the work and the service to others, the amplifying of causes and needs and solutions to injustice and environmental degradation, then we aren't presenting our total and authentic self. Example of that is we've been in a number of protests. We've been arrested 2 times by the Capitol Hill Police in DC. When we go to action in the streets, we see a lot of people that are angry. We see young people that are angry about a future that they thought they would have, but they don't. They're beginning to realize they aren't going to have. And others for all number of other causes. Our signs have evolved from being signs of anger along with them, and we appreciate that people are angry when they're protesting. Some are. Our signs say march with love. Our signs say power to the polls. We don't accept speaking truth to power, because we don't believe that the people that are sitting on Capitol Hill or in the White House are the power. We believe that authentic people serving others are the
What
power.
did you say? Power to the what?
Well, the phrase goes, you're supposed to speak truth. If you're mad, you speak truth to power. And we don't accept that terminology. We believe the power is with the sovereign being, with the individual, and with the collective of those sovereign individual beings cooperating together to bring a better world. That's what World Unity Week is all about, and so many other movements and organizations. And so it has helped us to reframe how we look at things. Yes, when we realized we never even knew there was a Juneteenth or a Tulsa massacre until the last 2 years, because the public school system never taught us that. When we didn't realize all the injustices against, quote, Asian Americans that are all lumped together in one lump sum. And then when 6 Asians got off the boat of the Titanic in New York, they put them back on a boat because there were laws in the United States that didn't allow Chinese people to be here. By name, Chinese people couldn't be here. They put them on a boat and sent them away. We didn't know those things, and we're blessed now in our lives to have the time to learn and then put into context and to work as a couple with each of our different, with our foundational, what we have in common foundationally of being authentic and caring about others and serving, but somewhat unique gifts as to what role we play and how we serve. Like you were saying, Dawn, about you and your husband, that the balance of strengths and weaknesses as individuals come to play in the doing part after the being part has been, is the foundation upon which we stand. So it's been a tremendous value to us, and in what we would consider our seva or our spiritual service to humanity and to the planet. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm going to go into, let's see, we've got about 14 minutes here. I'm going to go into some things that we can do to enhance our spiritual relationship with other people, directly, just plain old tools. And I'll tell you, once I had a woman call who was a spiritual leader, and she had moved to the same town that I was in, and I was head of a spiritual organization. And she said, I'd really like to meet you. I don't know where this came from. And I said, I would like to meet you too. However, will you agree to doing this? When we come in, you come to my office, we will sit together and we will look in each other's eyes for 1 hour before we speak. I never met the woman. I don't know what encouraged me to say that. So she came in, we sat down, and we looked at each other intimately, spiritual intimacy, for 1 hour before we spoke. I think these are the revolutionary kinds of things that we can do to move relationships to a different level. And I have other things that I encourage people to do, and this is a wonderful tool, and that is that one person sits across from another person, and the person looks, this is a validation of existence, which we need, especially if we didn't get that when we were young. And so one person, as you look into each other's eyes, one person says, I'm here. The other person says, I see you. And you just keep repeating that. I'm here. And the other person says, I see you. I'm here. I see you. And then you switch. So you get to see the other person and really acknowledge their existence. And then you get to be seen. And so that is an example of, some of the revolutionary and evolutionary tools that we can use to move ourselves to a higher level of consciousness. And I'm wondering if any of y'all have any particular tools or techniques that you know of that you've used either personally in your relationship with clients that you would speak to, and just kind of wave your hand. I'll call on you. Okay, Dawn, you go first, and then when she gets through, Leslie, you come in.
Well, in our book, Allison Smith, who is a friend of mine, who's also a life coach in Arizona, she and I got together about 2 years ago to write a book on boundaries, because we both kept running into that theme over and over again in our work. It's called Drawing Your Line, Setting Boundaries Step by Step. So there are 14 steps throughout the book in 8 sessions. And the first step is granting yourself permission. And one of the main steps is finding your support, coming alongside. So you start this road down this road of learning to set boundaries, learning to self-love. But the most important thing is you have to invite somebody in to come alongside with you. They don't have to take the class. They don't even have to buy the book. But to have someone that you invite to listen to the work that you are doing, to the journaling that you are putting forth every week in session, so that you have a sounding board. The requirement is that it is somebody who you feel is healthy, that you are in a healthy relationship with, who's a good listener, somebody who knows you well, and somebody who will be honest with you. So bringing forth this conversation that is intentional, that is rooted in self-growth, invites another person, another soul to come alongside and also join you on this journey. And eventually they wind up doing the work themselves anyway, because it's just powerful work, right? So this thing about inviting people into your life as you are on the journey, not when you're all feeling like you've done all the work and you're perfect and you're good for the world, but when you're in the process, somebody who you trust to come alongside, to be a support, but to also to be a spiritual sidekick, right? As you're doing that work, because they will be there for you, and then you'll wind up being there for them as they go along as well. And it's just a fruit-filled opportunity for everybody to grow. So.
Leslie, thank you, Dawn.
That was wonderful, Dawn. And I'm going to dovetail on the end of that, because I wanted to speak also to that coming into it with each other openly. A practice that I started years ago, and I started it first with my clients, but it's spread and I use it in many areas of life. I just had a girls' weekend and there were 4 of us, and we started the weekend this way. And what we do, what I invite my clients to do, and I will do it with them, in communion with them, is to place their hand on their heart and just breathe and really bring themselves into that center. And then close their eyes. Now they're in their center, they're in their heart, and say, the truth that I feel like sharing with you today is. So we're grounding, we're speaking to truth, we're speaking about feeling what I feel like sharing today. And then they will say whatever it is they want to say. At the close of that, I say, thank you for sharing, and then their name. After I do that, they will say, Leslie, what do you feel like sharing today? And I will go through the process. At the onset of every session I do with every client, I have initiated this practice. And what I noticed almost instantly is that the sessions we had, the sharings we had, the intention for forward movement for the client that we were having began to just blow up extemporaneous to their ability to be in that place. And by placing their hand on their heart, their physical hand on their heart, it helps them to bring their focus down out of that very active brain and into that space where our spirit speaks. And on many, many occasions, I've had a client open their eyes and they'll have tears in their eyes and they'll say, I did not even know that was coming up. I do not know where that came from. Well, it came from your heart. It was a truth that you wanted to get out, whether it was a happy truth or an unhappy truth. It is now out in the oxygen. It is no longer holding space where there could otherwise be flow. And it was just on a lark that I decided to say to my girlfriends, why don't we do that practice? The one that I do. 2 of them knew it, 2 of them didn't. And we did it that particular weekend, it was 3 days long, there was a level of emotional and spiritual intimacy that presented itself. And these are not new friends. These are old girlfriends, and everyone knew each other. But it put us in a centered space of being able to have this level of emotional and spiritual intimacy that was surprising and delightful and revelatory. So the truth I feel like sharing with you today is I'm grateful that you invited me in. Thank you all.
Thank you, Leslie. Bob, do you have anything to say on that? Or
I'm going to bless and endorse both Leslie and Dawn's practices, then ways they share with others. For me, it's I'm blessed to be many times, of course, in the last year and a half, it's been in 2-dimension, not 3-dimension. And in the years prior to that, in physical circle, in so many different places and circumstances, as you mentioned earlier, Anne. And the simple acknowledgement, the simple centering practice and coming together and allowing people to put their prior to this moment stuff aside and be present with each other in the forms that you've mentioned, and many other forms of whether that involves touch or holding hands or centering into a place of peacefulness in nature or with relationship, provides a starting point that just makes a big collective breath for it all. And I have seen this in such beautiful practice, whether it's 2 individuals, as you said, Pam, what an amazing thing to just sit and stare and be with each other for an hour, to 95 people on a Unity Earth Wednesday night call and being able to be in reflection together for a few moments, and the whole energy of all of that. These people are all over this planet, just settles right in to an opportunity for everyone to be authentic if they hold that and they purpose that and intend that for themselves. This has been delightful.
thank you. I want to thank all of you. I want to close a little bit on a note, and that is I've been involved in putting on many spiritual conferences, and we put on a conference in Sedona many years ago. And no, this was in Texas. This was the one in Texas. And so all these people came, and we had, things planned throughout the day. And we had people actually from all over the world. And one night, the leader said to me, I was the assistant, he said, "You take tonight, because I am just, whatever you want to do tonight, you just announce it, you just make it happen, you take tonight." So what I did was put on a variety show, and everybody joined, and I had people do their talents, and we put on this show, and we had fun. We were in relationship, and we had fun. Until that happened, we were all people from different parts of the world, different walks, different ideas. But when we had fun together, which is a universal language, the whole conference shifted dramatically. And so in our spiritual life, in our spiritual relationships, it's not going to be fun and games all the time, but it has to be fun part of the time. And that is really the glue that holds relationships together. If there is not as much fun as there is trauma and drama and everything else, then it makes it very difficult to have a healthy and holy relationship. So I'll leave you with that thought. I want you, Leslie, thank you so much for our relationship over the years and for all that you do. And Dawn too, thank you so much. And Bob as well. Thank you everyone so much.
Thank you. And